Please consider supporting Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. You can learn more about them at bwunited.ca. They are always looking for donations and volunteers. So please, again, support Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. Again, that website is bwunited.ca.
Well, hey there, it's Zach, all the way from Chesapeake, Virginia. Creative Control happens to be my favorite podcast. I value Vish's insight and his ability to balance humor with in-depth conversation while occasionally dipping into serious topics. Regardless of whether I've heard of the guest or not, or however long Vish has known them, you really do get the feeling that the two of them have known each other for a long time, and I walk away from every episode feeling like I gained something. I think that's testament to how good of a journalist and conversationalist Vish is. He has a real skill of opening people up. I also enjoy the spicy and lighthearted ribbing Vish does with his guests from time to time. Oh, and while I have you, did you know that for just $6 you can subscribe to the Creative Control Patreon and get access to all kinds of bonus content? And for $10, Vish will mail you one of his t-shirts. And hey, that Peaches shirt is pretty cool. Anyway, enjoy the episode and doot-doodle-oot-doo. Oh wait.
Good evening, and please welcome to the stage, Michael Balazo!
Creative Control with Vish Khanna.
Michael Balazo is one of the funniest people I've ever encountered, and he is currently based in his longtime home of Toronto, Ontario. A noted stand-up comedian and writer, Balazo currently co-hosts the Evil Men podcast and also once co-hosted the Landlord and Tenant Pod Mess, which is currently on hiatus. In 2020, he released his debut live stand-up record, which is called Complete Discography, though its title is already obsolete, as its hilarious follow-up, Michael 1 Comedy Zero, was recorded in June 2023 and released that same year on November 1st. As such, Michael returned to this show to discuss the album and the entertainment competition he faced on the evenings he was recording it. He talked about traveling back and forth from England a lot more of late. Things that may impact an audience's reaction time also came up. We discussed Burton Cummings and the fake Guess Who, pop culture highlights from 2023, seeing Metallica and Ramones live in concert, future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners exactly like you listening right now, who follow and subscribe to this donor-driven podcast and spread the word about it among your peers, your podcast listening peers, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/creative control. That is the primary source of revenue for all of the work that goes into me making this podcast. It might be the primary source of revenue for all of the work I do in the near future. So if you can, there have been a couple of pushes of late, as depending on when you're hearing this. There have been some pushes of late to get the Patreon support up on a monthly basis there. So if you've long thought about supporting this show on Patreon, please know there are incentives now. There are prize packs coming, and you get episodes earlier than everybody else. All sorts of little perks and gifts if I can help in some way to incentivize you to support the show. So anyway, you know what I'm saying. Thank you for listening. And if you can, support the show at patreon.com/creative control. Thank you very much. Plus in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. All wonderful independent businesses in Canada. This is episode 830 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Michael Balazo, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
I'm all right, Vish. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's my birthday.
I did see it was your birthday, and what an amazing birthday gift that you've given yourself. Me as a guest on your podcast.
Oh, you have no idea. I am so pleased that you are the first of 3 interviews that I have booked for my day. Because on your birthday, I can't emphasize this enough, at my current day job, I have my birthday off, so I took it off. And then I was like, because it's so busy, I was like, well, gotta bank some content. I'm going to talk to as many people as I can on my birthday. And when I said this to my daughter, she's like, you're going to just do work on your birthday? I'm like, it's not work. It's fun. I love talking to people. Sure, it doesn't pay. You're great. This is great. This is the first of 3. I can't imagine a better person to talk to. I hope you're doing well. Where in the world are you today?
I'm in the east end of Toronto, where I've lived for the past year. Just having a great time here in my living room, talking to you. And may I say, before we continue, the fact that you have 2 other people to talk to today on your birthday makes it a little less special. I thought I was the only one. So it seems like you're just talking to anyone who has some free time today. Listen.
I'll tell you what happened. I was planning. I don't like doing more than one of these a day, but something happened
Pure
where.
hell.
Well, it's a lot. You do this. It's a lot. It actually, people may not think having these kinds of conversational shows. It seems easy. It's not draining. I don't want to be negative, but it's work. It's a lot of work, isn't it? It's a mental and physical decathlon.
We podcasters are the modern day coal miners. We're the modern day shipbuilders. we're the modern day
I'm just
auto
saying,
workers.
To have multiple long form conversations in one day, it's a lot. It's a fair amount of work. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not saying
it is. Yes.
It's physical. Well, I'm telling you, mental acuity. I have a standing desk. I don't sit down. I'm standing all day talking to people. You know what I'm saying?
So this is the freshest you'll be all day, and I'm glad to have you in that state.
Well, I'm pleased to have you too, because first of all, before we get too much further, congratulations on another wonderful album, Michael 1, Comedy 0. I find it very enjoyable.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, it's my sophomore album. Hopefully I've avoided the sophomore slump. And it just came out recently. And your show is part of my massive nationwide press tour that is almost going to be 3 podcasts.
Dude, let's plug them. Where else have you appeared to talk about your show? I'm curious.
Well, the interesting thing is that Central and Eastern Canada were not even interested in the slightest in promoting my album. It was all podcasts in close to the Rocky Mountains. So it was Stop Podcasting Yourself
Wonderful.
out of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Block Party out of Vancouver. And now Creative Control from Edmonton. So
Right.
I'm slowly working my way to the east.
What does that tell you about the state of affairs in both comedy landscapes, interviewing, podcasting? What does it mean that everything's out west?
I think these Toronto media people, the insular Toronto, the cozy Toronto media elite, maybe I make them a little uncomfortable with my views and the way I freely express myself, and they don't know what to do with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know what to do with you, and I'm from where you're from, ostensibly, so I have an affinity for Ontario things. I know where you're coming from. Well, let's just quickly, when did you actually record this particular album? What was the month? What was the year, the date? You know what I'm saying?
June 22nd and 23rd at Comedy Bar West in Toronto, if anyone knows the venue, the original Comedy Bar. Recorded on I think it was a Thursday and a Friday night, and then spent the summer slowly doing edits, and I wanted to get it out faster than my first one, because the first one I almost didn't listen to the recordings for 6 months because I was too freaked out. But now I've heard my voice so often from editing podcasts and stuff that I was like, who cares? Just try and get it out as soon as possible. So I think it came out November 1st, because I think that was the deadline for submitting for a Juno, which I, in an act of blind faith, I did submit my album. For consideration.
It should be nominated. I'll say I haven't heard everyone else's records yet, but as a comedy fan and critic and someone who sat in on some of those Juno juries in the past, this cuts the this should be there. This should be absolutely there. It's great. So June, just for context, there was another, and I don't want to spoil too much. We'll be careful here. I want people to check out the album. But you do allude to the fact that there was another performer in town while you were recording your album. Is that right?
That is right. So the second night of the tapings, and I couldn't believe this. I was furious. I almost canceled the show that night. You know, I put a lot of work into my act, and I was excited to record my album. And the second night of the recordings, who was also doing a show that night, stealing my audience, splitting my audience in two, but Shania Twain,
right,
who is, I believe, performing at the Air Canada Centre. And to me, that is a classic case. It's like a David versus Goliath thing. Like, she's Goliath in this telling of the story. You know, she's not letting young emerging artists do their thing.
Demographic inconsideration, I would call it. Rudeness. I love the fact that on your album and in this conversation, you continue to refer to the Scotiabank Arena as the Air Canada Centre. The way we don't call, most people from Ontario do not even call the Rogers Centre anything but the Sky Dome. But this is a corporate distinction, though. Sky Dome. I like saying it because I don't feel like I'm saying... I don't think about it, but I feel like it was called the Sky Dome, yes, but it was never the Rogers Sky Dome. It was never the Scotiabank Sky Dome. It's the Sky Dome. The only company affiliated with it is Heaven Above, the sky. Are you stubbornly calling it the Air Canada Centre for some purpose?
I guess I attach a lot of sentimental value to Air Canada as an airline. They're a company that mean a lot to me and have always been there throughout my life. So in my heart, it'll always be the Air Canada Centre. Great airline, great people. Sometimes I just go to, Pearson Airport and just hang out near the Air Canada desk and try and make new friends, hang out, see where people are flying.
Yes, I know that about you. I don't want to provoke any hackers here. But given the context, and for full disclosure, what is your bank of choice?
Oh, my bank of choice. I'm a TD guy.
See?
TD Canada.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think you're avoiding saying the name because of your affinity for a particular kind of bank. What do you think of that?
Are TD and... because Scotia. I see what you're doing now. Michael, you know that banks are separate entities. It's not just you go to the bank and they're all owned by the same company. You have chosen, and for the hackers, I'll say this. Michael and I have a shared association with the same bank. However... it's nice to talk to a fellow TD banker for once.
And it's Toronto pride for you as well. You're not from Nova Scotia. What do you care?
Nope.
They're not even willing to talk to you about your comedy album. So you've gone with TD. Anyway, I find... sorry. We're clearly...
I was hacked last year. My bank account was hacked last year.
Oh, no. I'm sorry to hear that.
My girlfriend had just... I had dropped her off at the airport for her to fly back to the UK. And as I came back to downtown, I got a series of phone calls and emergency texts saying that my bank account had been frozen. And I looked into it, and someone had stolen $2,000 out of my checking account.
Oh, my God.
The thought did cross my mind. I was like, did my girlfriend steal money and then fly home?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. That is severe trust issues that you've developed there. Sorry.
And I had to wait 8 hours until I could talk to her about it.
I was also... I was hacked... we were hacked twice. But the most recent one has severely impacted my credit rating. Someone mucked around with a bank I'm not even associated with. And the bank, what I found out, I was like, what's going on? Why can't I do stuff? They're like, because of your account with such and such. I'm like, I don't have an account with such and such. So I looked into it, and such bank was aware of the issue for a full year and a half and had not contacted me or my actual bank to say, by the way... with the credit stuff, you find out when you're applying for a mortgage or whatever, and they say, we did a check, it's not working. And I that's when I found out. And when someone on the phone from the bank admitted, oh yeah, we knew about that, we flagged it. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me or anyone else? To this day, I was trying to do something, and they're like, we'll just do a run-of-the-mill credit check. Even though by the way, my credit is immaculate. I have nothing to worry about. And then some person and the bank, I hate banks. I think we should just call it the center, not the Scotiabank or the Air Canada. It's just the arena or the center. I hate them all. Sorry. I didn't mean to rant at you, but yes.
I'm sorry this happened. And it doesn't sound like the person you talked to embodied TD Canada's values.
This was not TD, though. What I'm saying is I have an association with a bank. What I found out is they said your credit is mucked up because of you didn't do something with this bank, the other bank. And I don't have an account with that bank. That's impossible. Mm-hmm. They said, then what I'm saying is then I contacted the other bank and said, hey, what the hell? And someone on the phone, and some underling was like, oh, yeah, we flagged that. We flagged that a year and a half ago. And I said, what? They're like, hang on a second. And then they put me on with someone else who was like, we are not aware of any situation. You know what I'm saying? Chicanery, hijinks. Anyway, I'm sorry you got hacked. You are flying back and forth a lot these days to the United Kingdom. Is that right?
United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland. Correct. My girlfriend is also a comedian. I think much more successful than me. Her name is Suze Kempner, and she's pretty big on Twitter and Twitch and stuff. And we've been doing a very convenient long-distance overseas relationship for the past year and a half. Yeah. And it's good because it's cheap. It's a cheap way
I understand what you're...
to go on a date. Yeah.
Michael, any thoughts of leaving your beloved Toronto anytime soon?
I mean, the thought of waving bye-bye to the Sky Dome and to TD Canada, my local branch at Danforth and Coxwell, that's so sad. But I don't know. I mean, I'd love to dip my Canadian toe in the crazy comedy scene over there, but it also seems very very difficult. They're really sealing their borders shut. It's pretty hard to just pack up and move there if you don't have a sort of ancestry connection. Like neither of my parents were born in the UK or Europe or whatever, so it's quite difficult.
What about the opposite? Would Suze contemplate Canada, one of the colonies that her...
I don't think so. I always say that, I love this country and I love all the opportunities it's given me, but I do say that it would be somewhat of a step down for her to come here. Although people love Brits here, so maybe she would immediately star in every TV show as the funny British lady. I don't know.
She's an actor as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you go over there, you go across the pond, as we like to say, to England, to visit your lady friend. Do you then take up the opportunity to perform stand-up for the Brits?
I do treat them with my unique stand-up comedy. Yeah, I've done a bunch of shows over there, in London and in Edinburgh a bit for the past 2 summers. But I'd like to, if I spend more, a substantial amount of time there, I'd love to do more shows.
The
comedy scene.
People often will ask comedians how their set was, and sometimes the comedian's like, "Which one? I did 3 tonight." That kind of thing. I don't mean to get you to just
grinding.
Is that am I mischaracter? It's not unusual for you to do a few sets a night sometimes, right?
Yeah, 2, sometimes maybe 3 if things are haywire. But especially beginning comedians do that. I try and I try to do as many shows as possible, but maybe 2 is my maximum usually. But you hear about these New York comedians who are I did 16 sets last night, and my life is falling apart.
Yeah.
And
I got the podcast hustle today. I'm doing 3 interviews in one day. I don't normally do that. That's 3 sets, except they're probably going to be longer than a normal comedy set.
And you don't have to go to a dingy bar. And,
no. It's after this, I'm going to sit on the couch
and
contemplate my next one. But my point was going to be, if you could generalize about the experience of performing stand-up for the Brits, the Irish, the Scots, in comparison to the sets you do primarily, I think, for Canucks, how would you rate and compare the experiences?
I believe now there's one important factor here, and I think it's more recent. I believe that audiences in the UK are a bit more, maybe not boisterous, but reactive and demonstrative. They're not maybe as shy, or I think the prevalence of pot and marijuana and stuff, in my opinion, has had a big effect on audience reactions. Sometimes a quiet audience, you might think, are they all stoned? Are they quietly enjoying the show? Or very unlikely. Maybe I'm just not doing a good job and they don't find my jokes funny. But I believe the use of pot has like altered sort of audience reactions in this country.
Oh, in Canada. You're talking about Canada, right?
Yeah, in Canada. Because, I mean, pot is very much still very illegal in the UK.
Oh, that's really fascinating. So you're describing it as silence, but I also gather you might be referring... Again, you might be...
All these audiences, they're silent whenever I do comedy. I don't know what's up. It must be pot.
I have Michael on to upsell his work and his album. I know he's here, but to anyone listening, Michael is one of the funniest people I know and funniest people I've encountered from afar. I don't know how long Twitter is going to last, but he's endlessly funny. I think, Michael, now that I'm referring back to you, there's no way a crowd is being silent in your presence. I think you're infinitely funny. May I say that to you? Is that untoward?
You may. So infinitely. So it's like getting into the realms of quantum physics?
All right, listen. Now I regret saying anything. You've taken my compliment and you've thrown it back in my face. No, I think you're very funny. Nice. What I'm saying is, you're saying the pot, it's silence, but it's a delayed... I don't know enough about the pot and the reefer. I don't do the drugs. So my understanding is it relaxes people. It puts them in a stoned, right? That's the phrase. It just... mellows them out.
It turns them into murderous fiends that want to kill.
Is it fair to say their reflexes, their reaction time could be delayed? If something was said that was funny or droll, other people might be like, ha 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 ha, within a second.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's under the influence, let's say, might be like, nothing, and then you get the staggered laugh. Is that what you're referring to? The staggered laughter, the delay?
Staggered laughter. Their uncomprehending brains take a long time to process the information being delivered to them from the stage.
Well, listen, I don't. So that's a distinction. That's a significant distinction. It's not necessarily your material. Like, do you? Sometimes when you go to a different city, even in Canada, you will tailor your material a little bit to the crowd. Some people don't do this at all, by the way. But do you find you modify your approach in any way?
You know what? I've always heard about that. Like when you're a road comedian, you always look up the local news and find out what the name of the mayor is, and do some local references, and the audience will love you. I've tried that a bunch of times, and it never goes well. and so I think I've abandoned that kind of thing, and I just should.
Do you think it's because people are like, oh, this guy did really preliminary research for that one? Like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, that kind of thing?
We know that you just read the news today and you just looked up on Wikipedia the name of the mayor. You don't really care about us and our struggles.
There was a common joke that used to occur at JFL 42 in Toronto. By the way, is Toronto still perpetually under construction? It always seems to be.
It is right downtown in the financial district, also at Yonge and Eglinton, where it's been dug up for 10 years, and maybe it'll be 5 more years or something. Yeah.
Because the common joke, numerous American comedians would come on stage and say this joke, exactly this joke. Hey, great city you got here, Toronto. It'll be really great when it's finished. They would all say some semblance of that joke, but it would always get a big roar. Hey, they talked about us. The Americans talking about, that's the recognition, right? So it's as much for you as it is the crowd. I get it, but you're right. It doesn't always work, is what you're saying on some level. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I am pleased to have you on the show for a record that you made in the year 2023 because I feel like the year up to that point is somewhat reflected on the album. There's a very funny extended bit about the sad passing of the Queen, for example, among other jokes. How is 2023 for you generally, Michael?
How has it been? It's been okay. It's been good. I've been able to travel to the UK a bunch. I've been able to I did the Winnipeg Comedy Festival this year, and I did a taping for CBC Television, so I got to do that at the Burton Cummings Theater, which is beautiful. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't, actually. I've been to the West End Cultural Center for Juno Award events in the year 2004. And now I think of it, no. I've heard it's a nice theater, and it's named after, guess who? Burton Cummings. That's great.
Burton Cummings, and the real Burton Cummings, not the fake Burton Cummings. Who's
Right.
have you been following that? The fake Guess Who?
Yes, I actually, not only am I following it because it has trended on various social media platforms, I received all the press releases inviting me to interview the Guess Who, and I was like, oh, are the Guess Who going? Now, I will admit to you, I don't follow their work, but I did. I went through a slight Guess Who phase. And I was like, these are cool songs. I like them when Randy Bachman and Burton Cummings were in that band together. But what you're referring to, Michael, I believe, is that there is an iteration of the Guess Who circulating, touring, without Burton Cummings, the primary singer, and Randy Bachman. By the way, I saw them. I saw them play a show at the Molson Amphitheater in like 2003, and it was as many of the original members as possible. Now it's like some shadow Guess Who. Is that right?
I think it's like maybe one or two original members that I think are using the name and maybe tricking people into thinking they're getting the whole Burton and Randy package. So Burton and Randy are so mad. They're just fuming.
Yes, they want to sue, and they're Burton Cummings seems to be on his own Twitter saying, this isn't what the hell. And
I saw him a few summers ago, and I went with my brother at the CNE. Yeah. And we bought tickets, and we thought, like, this will be a laugh. It'll be funny to see. And then within, like, 3 songs, we're like, oh, my God, he wrote so many amazing songs. And we were, like, legitimately, like, he is, a national treasure. What a great musician.
Is it difficult to take him seriously because of his mustache?
I think that was it. That's the main thing, the mustache.
Yeah. It's hard to take someone... He's okay, listen. People are going to mock us for this. He's arguably a great singer.
Yeah.
If you like, he's a great singer, and he's a great musician. Often rocking the keyboards there. And you're right. So many classics that I'm not exposed to anymore. I don't listen to classic rock radio in Canada, but so many classics. For those who don't know, you might be familiar with a fella named Lenny Kravitz. And some years ago, Lenny Kravitz performed. I think it was for a movie. He recorded a version of the song American Woman. Well, guess what? Guess who wrote that song? The Guess Who, Burton Cummings. And
it wasn't just for any movie. It was for, I believe, an Austin Powers sequel. I think it was.
Yes, you might be right. It might be for The Spy Who Shagged Me or something like that.
Yeah.
I think you're correct. So that was Mike Myers' probably tip of the hat to his home country. Let's get Lenny Kravitz to do a Guess Who song. So, yeah, it is hard to be a... I think what we're getting at is it can be difficult to be a living legend who has a mustache. Like, that's...
Absolutely.
Why not? And, he's shorn that mustache, and I don't even... have you ever seen him without the mustache?
I don't think I have, but it would be like that kind of thing when, like, my dad had a mustache most of my life, and then there was like the rare occasion where he shaved it, and then the first time you see him, you're like, who are you?
Yeah.
So I'd probably wince if I saw Burton without his iconic mustache.
He doesn't quite look like himself. And he appeared, I caught some Juno Awards telecast in the last 5-6 years, and he appeared, and he seemed a little erratic. He seemed a little hyper to be on stage with the Youngs, and I was like, something wrong with Burton Cummings. But then I was like, maybe it's just the mustache. I can't stop thinking that everything in his life would be better and his legacy would be stronger if he simply got a sponsorship from Gillette and just got rid of the thing,
Is it too late to stage an intervention this late in his career?
Well, he is also arguably the Tom Selleck of Canadian music. Like, if he takes the mustache off, like you said, people are like, was that Burton Cummings or was that Ron Sexsmith? Who was that,
Everyone would be asking for a refund. He wouldn't be able to command any of his, fees for his performances. It'd be disaster.
Well, if the fake Guess Who were smart, they would all sport mustaches. Then there would be no confusion. They'd be like, what do you mean? What do you want a refund? Didn't you see the mustaches? That's what I would say if I were them. Anyway, why are we talking about the Guess Who? How did this come up? You went to go see them? Is that what we said?
Well, I went to see Burton Cummings a few years ago, and between every song, he was like, tonight's all about, we're just going to play some toe-tapping rock and roll. And he said that between every song, toe-tapping rock and roll.
Oh, well, see, that doesn't seem right. There's maybe something wrong there, or sorry, I shouldn't say that. Maybe he has some affliction that we don't know of, like... You hear about this. These musical geniuses are often on some sort of spectrum. Maybe he's got like a Brian Wilson thing, and you know what? Yeah. Maybe I take it all back. I didn't mean to disrespect Burton Cummings at all. I think what I started out saying is I went through a good Guess Who phase in this century, and
we love him. We love him.
We do. So, you performed at the Burton Cummings Theater at the yes. Winnipeg Comedy Festival. That's how this started. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's a great feather in your cap. That's a great milestone for the year, I would think.
And I had no mustache, and so the staff were like, "Are you sure you want to go on that stage with no mustache?" And I said, "Yeah, watch me." And it was good. Yeah, so I did the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. I released this album, which was a goal. And what else did I do? I had a lot of nice meals and spent quality time with my friends and family.
Oh, great. Well, that's great. That's excellent. So in a broader view of the year that was, pop culturally, does anything stand out for you about this particular year? I have some thoughts and ideas about pop culture stuff, I suppose. But it is also, I was just remarking about this in an exchange on Twitter today. Because I've been so swamped, it is the first year in probably 20 where I didn't submit a best of list to a magazine I write for. I was just too swamped, and I think I was even traveling to Ontario back and forth for a week to go. I went to go see Bob Dylan three times in Ontario, and twice in Ontario, twice in Toronto, once in Rochester, New York. And I think the deadline to submit the stuff was around then. I don't remember. My point is, I didn't submit a film, best of film. I was on your podcast once doing this exercise where we talked about the year that was, and I had it solid because I had made one of those. I'd made a best films, best TV shows, best music, maybe best books. I had it all down, and
you're slipping.
This year, the tweet in question was, someone just bluntly said, my friend Carla bluntly said, I haven't listened to any new music this year, which it was very sad to read. But I also wrote, that's sad. It's weird. I just told her exactly what I just told you. Without my year in review list, I feel a little adrift. Because that's usually that's an exercise that helps me reflect on everything cool that happened. You know what I mean? Sorry, not about me. Do you relate to what I'm saying? Have you ever made a list at the end of the year?
Well, in anticipation of this recording today, I did go back and try and think of what my highlights were, and I was like, oh, my interests are getting so narrow and repetitive. Yeah.
This is what that tweet said too. This was a music person, a music fan saying bluntly, sadly, I don't want us to get sad. I don't know what it means, but you're saying sort of a similar.
I don't want to make you sad on your birthday. That's the last thing I want to do.
You know what? I'm already sad on my birthday, despite all the joy coming my way today. I'm already a little sad, so it's okay. You can't make me sadder than I am, is what I'm saying. Don't worry.
Well, I noticed that I didn't really see that many new movies this year. In fact, I think I only saw 2, Killers of the Flower Moon, which I loved. I saw that in London in a freezing cold theater that didn't have the heat on because that country is living in the Victorian era. It was really shocking. It was 3 hours and 40 minutes, basically like watching a movie in a McDonald's freezer.
I haven't seen this film yet, so you had the experience of watching what I understand to be an arduous film about terrible things, while you yourself were viscerally and physically suffering. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I felt like who's really being. I was like, who's having a worse time? The people on the screen or me freezing in the theater right now?
No,
here, you know what I mean.
I don't want to know what you mean in this case, but I know what you mean. Let's put it that way.
You know what I mean. And have you seen it? Did you see?
No, like I say, I haven't yet. I think I said, maybe I didn't. No, I haven't. The only time I've been to a movie theater in the last 3 years was this past summer. We were in Cambridge, Ontario. I made 2 trips to Ontario this year, which is unusual. But we were there in the summertime and staying with my parents, my whole family and I, for the first time. We're back in Ontario together. And on one day, we decided we'd go see Barbie. So we decided we would go, and I hadn't been to a movie theater in a long time, and it was a Cineplex or something. And we go, and I'm like, what the hell? The seats recline, and you have more distance between you and the person next to you. What luxury is this? And
it's like being in a spaceship now, going to see.
Is this the norm? Is what I experienced normal now?
It sounds like that might have been like a VIP ticket you bought, but you can have...
No,
really?
it was not. We paid... Well, so we walked in. I paid for the tickets through, I think, a person. And then, we were contemplating popcorn, and I looked over, and it was all sort of automated. The popcorn was already prepared in its bags, and you're just supposed to go and take it to someone else. There's no person putting it in for you.
AI.
And
AI
butter. They say, put your butter on yourself. But they also say, there's a butter shortage. Don't put too much butter, please. So I'm like, butter shortage? What is a butter shortage? I haven't heard of this. Anyways.
What is this, the Great Depression?
It feels that way on some level. Yeah. And anyway, we enjoyed Barbie. That's the only time I've been to the movies. I have not been to see Scorsese's latest epic, which I've heard is good. So, but I've also heard if you go, you might be very cold. That's the other thing I've heard.
Yeah, everyone should know that if you go, and that's the way Scorsese wants it. He was like, I want everyone to watch this film in sub-zero temperatures.
He basically he wanted it to be like the scene in, is it Goodfellas or Casino? I think it's Goodfellas where all the guys are hung up in the meat lockers. It's Goodfellas for sure. I think that's what he was going for. Do you know what I'm referring to? Sorry, this is Goodfellas is on TV like every other week here in Edmonton. It's on some channel. It's either commercial free or the unedited version, and I've watched Goodfellas because I'm always like, what am I going to watch while I'm eating this bowl of cereal? Oh, Goodfellas is on again. Do I watch Goodfellas or Family Ties? That's what I often think. And sometimes I'm like, they're kind of the same sort of idea. And then I watch like a precocious young man with conservative values, just wants money. Ray Liotta and Michael J. Fox is basically the same character. I'm sorry, I've really digressed here, Michael. You saw this film. What else did you want to say about that or other things?
Oh, I loved it. And I saw the other current movie I saw was Saltburn. Have you seen Saltburn?
I haven't. As I've already explained, I haven't really taken it upon myself to... I appreciate you. This is just it, though, Michael. Last time, you probably thought, oh, this will be great. Vish is very immersed in pop culture. I know this because when he was on my old... By the way, is the Landlord and Tenant podcast just pod mess? Is it all done?
Pod mess. It's on a long hiatus right now because then James Hartnett and Chris Locke and I do the podcast Evil Men now, which has been going for like 2 years.
Yes, and I must admit I mostly engage with it via clips and things, and it's always very funny. I need to dig in. And having said that, I know this sounds ridiculous having said what I just said, being unknowledgeable about the whole of the show, because it's just, as you know, Michael, it's just hard to consume everything these days. I will say I'd like to dig into recent episodes because it's been a while since I've actually been able to sit down and listen to it, and consider this an open invitation. If this podcast still exists, mine and yours, and you guys ever want to gather and talk, I think we've had a nice thing over the years where we bring each other on our show. So I just want to say that. And before I forget, I love Chris. I love James. I like you. It'll be great to have you all on the show sometime to talk about that show. But so you're doing that. Sure. That's your primary podcast pursuit right now.
Right now, yes. Evil Men. We came up with the original idea. We invented a format where each week we look at a bad person from history.
Yes, and
we're the first ones to do it. Yeah,
and you have guests, and they will talk about bad people as well.
Yes, and either comedians or people of note, media personalities, sports broadcasters, authors, whoever we can get. You should come on and pick a evil person.
Oh well, listen, I wasn't fishing or to get on. I appreciate that, and maybe someday if I can find it in my heart and mind to characterize someone as evil, which I don't normally do. As you know, I'm not a cynical person.
Your fault is that you're too forgiving and that you love too much.
This is what I've heard. And I think it's true. No, I appreciate that. I would love to be on there. And I don't mean to sidetrack you from talking about movies I haven't seen. Saltburn. I keep seeing people talk about Saltburn and use it almost as language. You got Saltburned. I don't know what they're talking about because I haven't seen the film. What is Saltburn?
You've been Saltburned.
You got
It's basically, so it's a British film that is like about class divide. They're obsessed with class still over there. So it's like this, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Barry. He's the Irish actor Barry Keoghan, who was in Banshees of Inisherin and Killing of a Sacred Deer, I think. So he plays this like person from a disadvantaged like sort of background with a bad family situation who falls in with these rich kids at Oxford, and then the like the most popular of the rich kids is like, you shouldn't go home, you should come stay at my family's place this summer. And so he stays at this sprawling beautiful mansion with all these rich kids, and he realizes that he's, you know, from a different world than these rich people, and then it veers off into a totally bonkers direction that you don't see coming. And then sex, violence, revenge, all sorts of stuff. A famous scene in a bathtub.
Famous scene. So earlier I was alluding to the fact that I feel like people are invoking Saltburn in a meme-like way. Do you know what I'm referring to? And can you describe that if you do, the meme?
Well, I think it's based on a few like outrageous images from the movie in a bathtub. Like, I don't want to give Saltburn spoilers. Heaven forbid, especially on your birthday.
Yeah,
but
that would be bad.
It's like there's a few depraved moments in the movie that I guess people are using as memes, I guess.
Okay, I haven't. It's one of those things where if you follow some, particularly Twitter, as I do, you will catch on to what a meme means after the fifth iteration of them. You'll be like, "What is this?" And then because it's a lot of Twitter can be a little insular, and you have to kind of follow the whole storyline eventually. And my favorite thing is I'm like, I don't know what that is. Maybe I'll look in the comments, and the comments are like, "Can you explain this? What does this mean?" And then eventually you'll get to someone a very beautiful soul who's like, "Oh, this is a reference to this," and you're like, "Okay, now I get it." And then you leave that thread, and then you, because of your low self-esteem and your need to feel like you're in the know, you'll be like, "Ha ha ha! I get it now." And you like all the other ones because you're like, I'm in the know. I get it. It's a really like I like it. I like to know things, but I also sometimes when I think about my behavior, I'm like, do I just like this because I know what it is and very few other people do? You know what I'm saying? I get that. I have a little.
I've never thought about it so deeply, but it is.
Well, as you may or may not know, Michael, I have to immerse myself in Twitter for another gig I have, and compiling the funniest tweets, which is still going somehow. I keep waiting for this platform to. What do you make of this, Michael? And a friend of mine told me it's growing tiresome that I always say, "Are you still on Twitter?" Because they're like, "What the hell? Why are you asking this?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Every time I put out an episode, like there's always some weird thing that the owner of the company does, and people are like, I'm done, I'm leaving, and then no one really leaves. They come back. It's very confusing. What do you make of it? You're again, great Twitterer. What do you make of this? What's your relationship with the platform right now in terms of its cultural cachet and also the problematic nature of it as well?
Well, Vish, thank you for asking me. I do use it less than I used to, like much less than I used to. Maybe I'll like send off a barrage of tweets and then nothing for a few days. But it's mostly come down to just like promoting stuff. But I do have friends who have quit and gone to like Blue Sky or what's the other one? Threads, which I haven't done yet. And other people who I know, like my girlfriend Suze, who has like 107,000 followers, she has told me that she has like no reach now. Like something weird. Either she's like shadow banned. I know other people who feel like their tweets just don't get seen anymore, and people feel like they're just tweeting into the void, and it just no one's getting it. I don't know. Yeah,
that happens. I don't want to sound petty and whatever, or like I'm too. Let's put it this way. I'm not concerned about the same things, but I've noticed the same things. One Instagram story or post, for some inexplicable reason, will explode. I'm like, why the hell does this stupid thing that I shared have 1 billion views? And then another thing will just bomb out 20 views. And of course, it's always the thing I care the most about. And then I'm like, is it the links? Is it the tagging, and then Twitter. But Twitter is more nefarious. I think there's some purposeful stuff. So and then Sue's has Sue's gone to Blue Sky or the other things?
She has, yeah,
and you got to start all over. Like that's just it. People don't, whatever. I have a modest. Well, in the grand scheme of things, I have a modest Twitter following on my main, right? But it's also just whatever. That's what it is. I go over to Blue Sky, not even close. Like it's just taking forever and I don't care, except I care. I'm like you. I'm like Suze. We have things to promote. The bottom line is that's what we're doing. We're putting ourselves out there so people... Michael, would you say you've benefited from your Twitter presence in a professional manner?
I think so. Just in terms of getting to meet certain people in real life and to have people just see my, whatever clips or jokes and things like that. Your
long-distance girlfriend, how did you connect in the first place?
Twitter. It was Twitter.
See what I'm saying? Oh, my God. I feel terrible. But I just asked you if anything significant happened to you for Twitter, and you did not. I had to remind you that the love of your life... I'm sorry, Suze. I'm here to help Michael. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's the truth, isn't it? And I will say, I know this. I feel like... This is going to sound creepy, but I follow you. I feel like I saw this sort of blossoming, this interaction. Like I feel like she liked... I would share your stuff on various things, and then I was like, the Suze... I'd get a notification. Suze shared your thing. Yeah. Your retweet of Michael's thing was shared by Suze, and that's what I mean. I have a sense memory of that interaction.
This is so eerie. It's so voyeuristic. I'm just imagining you like peeking through.
Oh my God!
Some Venetian blinds.
Sorry, listen
at our Twitter exchanges.
This does sound creepy and voyeuristic. I'm telling you, Michael, and you know this, so I know you're joking. One of my jobs is to follow funny Twitter people,
yes.
So it is just that. I'm saying. I shouldn't have probably put it this way, that I saw this romance blossom, but I feel like I saw some exchanges and I was like, what's going on here? And then left it alone. Mm-hmm. And then you guys started to be more sort of public in your, hey, my boyfriend is so funny and oh, I'm going to see my lady, whatever. You know how you talk. So you're slowing down, and do you have any predictions about, it's hard to predict what's going to happen with Twitter particularly, don't you think?
I mean, that Elon Musk, he's just so unpredictable and such an enigma and such a wild guy. I hate when he's described that way because he is just he has no charisma and he can't even put a sentence together, and the media has just decided that, like, he's certainly a wild card, that Elon Musk. I hope he just loses the company. And
yes, that's what I think.
Was.
Isn't that what everyone's hoping for? Like, I think that's why those of us who are... I also don't... luckily, seem to be the victim of some of the more horrid, the more horrid aspects of Twitter in terms of anti-Semitism, white supremacy. I see people share. People are quitting in solidarity, I think, as well, and I'm close to that every week. I'm like, but as I've mentioned numerous times, one of my jobs is to actually follow it and wait for it to collapse. And the other side of it is, one of my jobs is promoting things. And when you promote something on Twitter, it still seems to have more resonance than almost anything but Facebook. So I'm sorry, lots of tangents today. Saltland. What else is going on?
Saltburn.
Saltland.
Saltland. Now, is this relevant? In 2023, I saw the movie James Cameron's Titanic for the first time.
Yes, I feel like, is this part of your album? I can't recall. I feel like you talked about it.
I do have a joke about seeing Titanic on my new album, Michael 1, Comedy 0. I also watched The French Connection this year.
For the first time?
No, I rewatched it.
Oh, yeah.
But cultural highlight of 2023, rewatching The French Connection.
What did you make of that? Gene Hackman's fantastic, by the way, and I hope he lives forever. Unless some weird stories come out about him, in which case...
he should die immediately.
Mind. Yes, immediately. What did you make of Titanic? I have only seen that, I want to say once, maybe once and a half if it was on TV. What did you make of it?
Oh, I thought it was amazing. And I had worked in a video store when it came out, and I was like fully aware of how popular it was. I just never saw it for whatever reason. And so we went to go see it, and it was a 3D showing of Titanic.
Oh, wow.
And thought it was amazing. Just seemed.
Wait a minute. You saw Titanic not on Netflix. You went to an actual theatrical screening of it?
Yeah, they re-released it theatrically in 3D here. For I think it was the 25th anniversary.
Oh, it was an anniversary. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And you thought it was.
I thought, great work, James. And
this James Cameron makes these massive blockbusters, and the people of you and I of our ilk will instantly be like, it's too mainstream. But then you watch it and you're like, oh, like this guy really knows what he's doing. Did you hear that crazy story about that circulated a lot this year after the submersible accident? That James Cameron knows all about submarines. First of all, like knows more about it than almost anybody. So he's some sort of weird Renaissance guy. And then, but secondly, I believe the story that began circulating, which I'd never heard before, is that he was in a submarine when 9/11 happened and emerged from the ocean. And there's film of him being like, whew, that was a great time in the sub. You won't believe what happened. James, 9/11. Like, I don't think people were calling it 9/11 yet, but he's like, the guy was basically like, you won't believe it. And he was like, what? Anyway, I thought, sorry.
It's like when you're so rich that you miss 9/11. You're so successful that you miss it.
So successful and ingenious, I will say. So maybe because when that submersible thing occurred, which did happen,
he was like trashing it. He was like, that guy didn't know what he was doing. That submarine was trash.
Well, the fact that James Cameron could be called upon as a credible expert after that, like they didn't call him on 9/11 because he was in a submarine. We know that now. But if he was on the surface, dollars to donuts, they would have been having him on CNN being like, James Cameron, what do you make of this? These buildings going down. What do you think's happening? Oh, well, I'll tell you from my experience making Terminator 2, they should have made it out of that shiny, that stuff that we had Robert Pattinson, and then they would have been indestructible. If that had happened with that, then the buildings would have come down and come right back up. This is very dark. I'm sorry. Why am I making jokes about this?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I'm going to give you a free pass because it's your birthday.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. I don't mean to be insensitive, but I thought that was a weird story that came out this year that people went, very inexperienced submarine people went in a bad sub, and then it exploded, and everyone laughed at them. Everyone joked, and because they were rich people doing dumb things, and that was weird. And all of it, I did it. I was sharing the funny tweets on it, and then afterwards you're like, wait a minute, people died. And that is the ebb and flow of the news cycle, I would say, of like, oh, something terrible happened. 3 hours later, endless jokes about the same thing, and that's a weird part of Twitter too. Anyway, Titanic was good. Anything else?
Breaking news. Titanic is good. I made a list of other
all movies, by the way. All of your significant experiences beyond comedy specials, movies. Yeah.
I do have music here. I have I saw Metallica in Montreal with my brothers in August. They did this. They're doing this thing now where they will pick cities and they'll play 2 shows separated by a day, totally different sets.
Wow.
And we went there and saw them at the Big O. And I see you have an Expos framed picture behind you, or is that?
Oh yeah, that's actually an artist, Rick Froberg, the musician who unfortunately, sadly, passed away in 2023. That's an original work, and if I know you're trying to look at it. For some reason, he depicted Mounties, and clearly a murder scene, and. Yes. In French, it says "aller," which I believe means go. I have to consult my kids there in French immersion. I used to be good at French. And then, yes, for some reason, I have no relation. I don't understand. I never got to ask Rick about this. Montreal Expos. Yes, that's a keen eye you have. Eagle eye, Michael.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, so you got to see Metallica. James Hetfield, also famous mustache wearer, got rid of it. Fans turned on him.
Yeah.
So he
was sporting a mustache, let me just say, in August when we saw them. And they were great. And it was just funny to be, like, Quebec is, like, the home of heavy metal in North America. They love heavy metal there. So it was funny to see Metallica in Montreal.
Had you seen
And
them
my
before
brothers-
that? Ever?
I saw them once years ago when they, for some reason, were part of Lollapalooza.
Oh,
at
yes.
Wilson Park in Barrie.
Yes.
I think that was the same one where I finally saw the Ramones,
Oh, nice.
who were on like so early. They were on at like 3 or 4 p.m.
Yeah.
But it was great just to see them because I think they broke up and then all passed away
Yeah,
immediately after that
was,
tour.
Yeah, I regret never seeing them. As you know, maybe know. Why would you know this? My daughter is named after the Ramones. Ramona, yeah. So we
I was going to ask if it was the Bob Dylan song or the
yes,
Ramones.
people assume that because my other son is named after Levon Helm, actually. But no, it's actually because my son, who's got some years on my daughter, heard the Ramones at 3 or 4 years old and became obsessed. Like, to the point where I was a bit concerned. He knew the album sequences of the first 5. Oh, keep in mind, this is my doing. He liked it, so I'm like, let's listen to the next album. Like, it was one of those things where you turn on the car, you turn on your 2005 Toyota Matrix, and the CD is still in the car when you put your son in there from when you were driving by yourself. And then you're like, I should probably take this out and put the Raffi back in. My son is in the car now, and he literally was like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah.
What is this? I'm like, it's the Replacements or the Ramones. Completely obsessed with what his papa was into, wanted to connect with his papa. I know what's going on there, but as a result, first 5 Ramones albums in particular, he knew the lyrics and the album sequences at a very... it was a bit eerie. I'm like, maybe he's got something going on there. Like, what do I got to take him to? How can he? Because he wasn't just like, he'd be listening. He'd be like, the next song is beat on, like the next song is this. And I'm like,
now I want to sniff some glue.
Yeah. I actually, it gave me pause to hear my son singing 53rd and 3rd. And I'm like, I'm a bad parent. I should not.
Raffi can't compete with D.D. Ramone.
No. So
Sadly,
all this to say, that's amazing you got to see them. I regret not seeing them. I had a couple of opportunities, but I also think I was at an age where I'm like, that's not really the Ramones. Like, it was all the other auxiliary.
C.J. Ramone was there.
Yeah. So I had a thing even back then where I'm like, that's not actually the band, you know? But
it was, Johnny and Joey, I guess, were the 2 originals at that point.
Was Marky was Marky on drums or no? Because they
must have been Marky Ramone, yeah.
He had a falling out too, and it's hard to keep track. Like, Marky came and went. Like, he arrived to replace Tommy, and then I think, we don't have to talk about this.
There was a guy named Richie for a while.
Richie Ramone, and
well.
there are all sorts of Ramones, and I should know all their names off the top of my head, but I have all the Ramones. Anyway, sorry, that's great. That's great you got to see the Ramones and Metallica at Lollapalooza. And,
that's my cultural highlight of 2023 is seeing the Ramones in 1998.
Well, it sounds like, in a nutshell, it sounds like you had a fruitful and great year, and it's culminated in, for me anyway, in not only this conversation. I can't wait to let people know about Michael 1 Comedy Zero. Wonderful, wonderful album. I can't handle... Sorry, I don't want to... Yeah, I'm not going to gush further, but there's just certain bits that I can't handle. They're so funny, and they make me laugh so much, and I just want people to check it out. And so I commend you. Canadian passports, the landlords versus cops. There's just so many great bits here, Michael. It's hard to do them justice by just saying their titles.
Thank you.
People should dig in and actually listen to them for a full experience.
I do also finally, I got it on vinyl. I documented my long-standing beef with the Property Brothers. So if anyone's interested in hearing about that, check out my album.
Oh my God. Yes. That whole sequence is amazing. And your joke about their parentage, if you will, makes me... that's what made me laugh out loud again today as I was revisiting this album on my birthday, which I urge you to do on your birthday if you're looking for some joy, everyone. Listen to Michael 1 Comedy Zero for sure. And it's on vinyl. So a couple of things. I want to ask about your future plans, first of all. What's coming up next for you, Michael?
Coming up next, I'm just cruising and not really working very hard on anything until the new year.
You're just cruising, are you? Is that what you said? You're just cruising?
I'm just resting on my laurels, not doing anything till the new year, waiting for Christmas to wash over me. Actually, Suze Kempner and I are writing a sitcom pilot. So that's the major thing of I guess, a major project I have coming up. But other than that, just, more stand-up and the Evil Men podcast. And we're trying to see if in the spring we can do some live shows and recordings on both coasts to try and get out of Toronto for once. Yeah.
Well, clearly you have a market out west in Western Canada. They love you here.
Yeah.
That's where all the podcasts seem to be. That's great. And if people want to learn more about your activities and to pick up a vinyl copy even of Michael 1 Comedy 0, where would you like to send them?
Well, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at @mbalazo, and I must say I made it up. It's not on vinyl. It is only a streamable album.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Everywhere except for Spotify. Not because I'm taking a moral stance, but because the submission was rejected because I picked the wrong category and I can't change it now. But
which category did you pick?
On Spotify, I submitted it as spoken word, and then the subcategory was like humor or something, and some bizarre random rule that's like, if any tracks on a spoken word album are less than 2 minutes, it's rejected out of hand. And so I was told it'll never be on Spotify. But,
that company, as you may know, I'm not a fan of, and they're going to hear this and be mad at me maybe somehow, but whatever. There's a comedian on this show a few years ago named Jackie Kaysen, and she told me the story of how she signed a letter in solidarity with comedians asking Spotify to simply remunerate comedians for their stand-up records in at least the exact same way they remunerate musicians. And the company's reaction, according to her, was to take all of those comedians' albums off of Spotify. Like, that's how petty and angry these mega, it's what Elon does too. If you go after him in a sea of millions of users, he will, if you're prominent enough, he will find you and suspend you specifically. And he definitely Googles himself or looks up himself on Twitter. Yeah. So I think that company that we were just talking about is not easy to work with. Clearly, like, you screwed something up and you can't fix it. And then, but they also seem to have a weird thing with comedians, is what I'm saying. Like, no long leash for comedians. You screw up once with them and you're Anyway, I'm sorry. And some people are pressing their comedy records on vinyl. I don't think it is that unusual. I looked into it. Yeah. I did look into it, but there was such as you know, there's like the shortage and a backlog because vinyl is popular now. Yeah. It was something like a 10-month lag between sending it to them and having them pressed, and the price of it. I was like, there's no way. If I press, 1,000 or 500 copies, that I'm gonna sell all of them, and I'll just be stuck with the records. Even though I would love to have my albums on vinyl. Maybe in the future I'll do it. Well, all this to say, if you did it, I would buy a copy, at least one, and I think everyone should check it out on whatever. You got a Bandcamp or something? I have Bandcamp. It's on Apple Music, Deezer, all sorts of popular streaming platforms. Lots of platforms. It's true. I always forget about Deezer. My show's on Deezer, and I'm like, I never mentioned that to anyone. Check out my show on Deezer, which I assume is owned by Rivers Cuomo. Like, I don't know why it's called that. Or Brian Bell. Somebody, maybe it's Pat Wilson owns Deezer as a side thing. Anyway, Michael, this was a really fun chat for me. I want to go out on if possible, if it's permissible, from both your perspective and maybe Spotify's. Can we go out on a track from your new... That was a joke. I don't think we need Spotify's permission. Can we go out on a track from Michael 1 Comedy 0? And if so, can you tell us which one? And maybe why it came to... Maybe even a little bit about it and why it came to mind. Sure. How about we do the one I believe is called Cops versus Landlords that you referenced earlier. I have a little section where I'm talking about the cost of living that has been in the news for the past couple of years, and we've all felt the bite of it. The cost of groceries and housing in the country. And there was an incident that happened outside of Toronto that caught my eye about a dispute between a landlord and some tenants. And I thought that the way it was resolved was a little bit humorous, and maybe your listeners will also see the lighter side of it. Yes, these are back-to-back tracks, actually. Cost of living goes into landlords versus cops, according to what I'm seeing in front of me right now. But I think what you're suggesting is we go to landlords versus cops. Is that correct? Yes, please, yeah. Okay. This is Landlords versus Cops from the brilliant new album, which hopefully, and I don't want to jinx it, will be Juno Award nominated. come 2024.
Fingers crossed.
The album is Michael 1, Comedy 0, available via all fine online streaming retailers as we speak. Michael, thank you so much, as always, for giving me any time at all. I really think you're one of the funniest people in the world, so it means a lot to me that you make time for me, and I wish you the best of luck in the future, and I hope we talk soon.
Thank you, Vish, and happy birthday.
Oh, yes, right. Thank you. I keep forgetting.
Rent is also out of control. There's a cost of living crisis. Anyone here rent? Yeah, it's really so expensive, you know. And there's this awful story that happened recently. Maybe you heard just outside Toronto. There was like a dispute between a landlord and his tenants in Hamilton, and things escalated. Tragically, the landlord killed his tenants. Right? Awful story. It's not funny. But then the police came, killed the landlord. And hearing that story I find very confusing, because when it's cops versus landlords, I don't know who to root for. Cops are bad, but shooting a landlord, who am I to judge? It's an unsolvable moral puzzle. You know that society's in trouble when old friends like cops and landlords turn on each other. It's like from the Book of Revelations or something. Like, the lawman shall spilleth the blood of the landlord. The hellfires shall engulf the earth. No, I wish cops and landlords the best. If you're a cop or landlord here tonight, nothing but love for you. I honestly hope you never die.
Always a joy to speak with Michael. Thank you, Michael, for being back on this show, this time for the 830th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available just about wherever it is you get your podcasts. Do you use Deezer? It's on Deezer. I'll mention that. By the way, there's a Linktree link in the show notes, and depending on your podcast player preferences, I think I've got a lot of those options there and there. So yeah, wherever you listen to your podcast, you should be able to find this one. If you can't, for some reason, find an episode that you're looking for, or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can follow or like Creative Control and me, Vish, on various social media platforms. As I mentioned, there is a Linktree link in the show notes, and that should direct you to all of the things that I'm using and that you might be using too. And feel free to follow me or whatever on Twitter and Facebook and whatever else you use. Thank you. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to support me financially and obviously my work. The more money I have in the Patreon, the more time I have to devote to this show, and that's what I would like. So to do more than anything. I like doing the show, and it's become a bit more difficult in the last little while to find the time to do it, and I don't like that. I want to be able to put my whole heart and soul into this show because I enjoy it, and when I am on my game, it feels like things are going well, and when I'm distracted or tired, I can feel myself slipping. That's the main thing. I'd like to just make this a job, an actual job, not just a part-time job. Maybe that's all it can be, and that's whatever. You know what I'm saying. $6 USD or more a month grants you access to exclusive content on the Patreon there. You get the episodes earlier than everybody else. You get old tape of mine that I find. All sorts of things. And like I say, the main thing is you are supporting me and my work, and if you'd like to see that continue, I urge you, if you're able to support the show on Patreon, please do. Thank you so much. Also want to thank Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario, for their in-kind support for this show. Fine local independent businesses in Ontario that I used to frequent more often than I do now that I'm not there. But if you've got places like that where you live, I urge you to support them. I want to thank Jim Guthrie for lending me some music for the show. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And last but not least, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Michael. Check out his new album, Michael 1, Comedy 0. Please subscribe to this podcast or follow it and tell your friends all about it. And otherwise, I hope you're doing well and that, we interact soon. Thank you so much. Bye for now.